I usually get a lot of DMs, so today I wanted to reply some of those messages. So someone sent me a video. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to summarize the video. So what his question was, how can I accomplish this? Now, in the video, there was a property that was bought for about 4 billion for a commercial purpose. So, but when the buyer was in the process of acquisition, they discovered that this property was bought way cheaper many years ago, like I think around 10 million. So this person's question was, how can I accomplish this? So first things first, I want to use myself as a case study. I think understanding the fact that different locations have different infrastructural development that can trigger price. Now, many years ago, I used to be very involved in finance, and I was deeply rooted in financial markets. So during December, it was usually my break period. So I really travel. Not much of a traveler, though, but I did travel with my wife to Abuja, and most times we come here to explore properties and we buy. So there's a place we bought then, sometimes back. So while we were buying that place, someone told us of Lokogoma. It's about the fact that we didn't really know much of what was going on in Lokogoma. Now, this was many years ago, before Lokogoma became this massive hub for people. So then there was a lot of development that was coming to Lokogoma then. So we bought that location, even though my wife was not a big fan of that place, but we bought that place, and eventually we had some good return on investment. But you see, one thing we do in finance is, before we deploy funds into a particular financial asset, we usually do a lot of research. We do a lot of analysis, from technical to sentimental to fundamentals. So we look at assets that can give us great return on investment. So now they will not deploy our funds to that asset. Now the same thing applies to real estate. Like I always tell people, real estate and finance, there's a lot of similarities. To me, real estate is more of a finance business than even the real estate itself. So we bought this place, it did well, but if we had deployed our funds to Lokogoma, the return on investment would have been great. Why? Because Lokogoma was mapped out for mass housing. In short, it was about to explode in price. There was massive urbanization coming there. There was massive migration of people coming there. So all these factors tend to trigger price. Now, when we bought, like I said, it didn't do too badly. But if we had deployed it into Lokogoma, it would have done better. So understanding the locations is key in real estate. Certain locations can give you great returns, while other locations can give you much better returns on investment. Now, take for example now Abuja. Now, this is a location that is mapped out for mass housing development, but a lot of people don't realize that. Now, when we started our Vine City projects, we speculated that the roads will come into action, and now you can see the minister is doing an amazing job. Now, there's an access road all the way from Guzape straight down to Abuja, cutting through Apo Resettlement. Very accessible, very smooth. Now, like I said, Abuja is mapped out for mass housing. This is the reason why you see most of the land titles there are FCD letter of intent, similar to what happened to Lokogoma. Now, as a smart investor, you want to deploy your funds to where you can get far better returns. When we started selling our Vine City, we started selling for 3.3 million for 150 square meter, but today it's selling for 6.3 million. That's almost 100% return on investment. And we are still anticipating growth in this region because the roads have been laid out, and the internal roads into Abuja are going to be done by Gilmore. It's going to be a similar building type. It's going to be a similar road type like Guzape and Jahi. The roads have already been laid. The granite have been put in place. So it's a well mapped out road. You understand? So being a smart investor is understanding where you can maximize profit. Now, if you want to get that same result, the first thing you have to do is understand the master plan. Like I always tell people, the fact that you don't know does not mean that you won't suffer the consequences of not knowing. So knowledge is very important in real estate. Understanding where the government is heading to and laying your golden seeds at those regions is also very important. You know, I've talked about golden entries in real estate, how you can buy properties at pre-launch prices and maximize gain. Yes, so these are some of the things that a smart investor does. He takes advantage of the master plan and go where government is going and where he knows there will be massive infrastructure. Take, for example, now Abuja. The Apple mechanic, they're going to relocate them to Abuja. So what was that going to mean? It's going to mean there's going to be instant economic activities in this region, mapped out with the roads, mapped out with the fact that that location is mapped out on mass housing. So we're expecting another boom in this region. So be a smart investor today and take your time to explore locations before buying into them. Thanks. All right. So the next question is from another person. He said, I'm a civil servant. How can I buy any of your properties? Now, there's a lot of misconception about civil servants acquiring properties. Now, first and first, let me make this very clear. As a civil servant, you can access properties in Abuja. You don't have to be mega rich. You don't have to be the 1% of the 1%. You understand? First and first, you need to understand is that government wants you to own properties. You understand? And so what I've come to realize that there's a huge knowledge gap. People don't realize that there are tools there. You see, one thing about finance is a tool. As a smart person, you need to learn to play the game of finance. When I mean play the game, like learn to use it to your advantage. Now, as a civil servant, one thing the government has done over the past few years is to foster home ownership. You understand? Now, there are things you can access. You understand? There are funding that you can access. And one of those funding, I'm going to talk about, there are three major ones, but I'm going to focus more on two for now. Now, we have the National Housing Fund. Now, this is your Nigeria giving rights. As a Nigerian as above 21 years old, that is on a constant salary, you are eligible for this. But you see, most people don't realize that. There are even people that have been servicing their housing fund, but they don't know that they were meant to use this to acquire properties. Now, can a civil servant access a property up to 50 million? Absolutely, yes. Now, first things first is there are three major platforms that can give you access to mortgage. You see, mortgage is one thing that people use in the Western world to acquire properties a lot, but Nigerians are not aware of these things. And like I always say, the fact that you don't know does not mean you won't suffer the consequences of not knowing. So today I'm going to try and bridge the gap by talking about those things. Now, one of the things that a civil servant can access is the National Housing Fund. Now, the National Housing Fund is eligible for those above 21 years and with a constant salary. Now, with that there's actually a payment period from application to fund disbursement takes about, I think, roughly 8 months. Now, as a civil servant, the first thing you need to do is create an account with the Federal Mortgage Bank. After that, you need to be servicing it. You see, one thing about finance and banks is that for it, banks want to give you money. Most people don't realize that. They think that these things are not accessible. But the truth is that banks want to give you money as much as you want. They just want to be sure that you will pay them back. So to be able to access finance, first thing first you have to do is to think like the bank. If you're a bank, what would you want to do? You want to know who is taking your funds. You want to know their ability to pay back. You want to see cash flows. You want to see turnovers. So these are things that a civil servant has to put in play. So first things first for the National Housing Fund. Now, I know that MPR is around 27% for commercial banks. And that means for you to access commercial bank loans, it should be around 30% interest rate. But you see, the National Housing Fund doesn't operate that way. Despite the fact that MPR and interest rate has been on a high, the National Housing Fund still sticks at 6% interest rate per annum, and you can pay these mortgages over 30 years. All right. So the first thing you should do as a civil servant is first set up an account, set up a mortgage account. Then you have to be servicing it. This is what we call monthly contribution. These are some of the requirements that you have to be doing on a monthly basis. A certain amount of your salary will be contributed to the National Housing Fund. Usually, I think it's around 2%. Now, you do this for, I think, 6 months. Then you must be above 21. You must have a steady income, like I said. Now, doing all this automatically qualifies you for funding. Now, with that, you can access up to 50 million. Before, it was even less. See, I've seen people that don't earn much in Abuja, they are civil servants, but they own properties. They own terrace duplexes. And real estate is very powerful. One thing I'm always trying to put out there is for people to harness the power of real estate. If you're looking for a vehicle that can actually grow your finance, then I think real estate is the perfect vehicle for such. So, as a civil servant, you can access properties up to 50 million. I think one of the best bets for me, I'll say you can even go for block of flats. We have block of flats going for 30 million, block of flats going for 40 million. Like our main shark project, we started selling for 44 million pre-launch. So these are some of the things that you can access. So once you start servicing your mortgage, you can be able to pay these mortgages over 30 years. And now this is the beautiful part. When you're buying these properties now, over time, they will be very, very valuable in the future. Imagine what the property you're buying now and you're selling it in the next 20 years. You can imagine the return on investment. It will be so amazing. So these are some of the things that a civil servant can access. Now, like I said, the government wants you to own houses. They want you to own properties. That's why they even introduced another initiative called the MERIF. Now, the MERIF sits at, I think, 12% interest rates. All these things are done so that people can become homeowners. But I think the problem is that most people don't improve their knowledge bank. I think that's where the biggest challenge has been. So you can access property. You know, in my previous videos, I've talked about how you can scale in real estate, how you can start from one property to 2 to 3 to 4, how you can build cash flow and capital gains. I've talked about this in my previous episodes, so maybe you can go back and watch them. But I can tell you for sure, real estate is one of the perfect vehicles that can help you accomplish this. And as a civil servant, you can own properties. You don't have to be wealthy. You just need to understand finance to a certain level, or get a professional that can put you through these processes and become a homeowner. One thing I always try to put out there in my firm is to increase home ownership. And we know these things are accessible. That's why we have a variety of products, from fractional plot ownership, which makes you a co-owner of a plot, from our payment plan that are designed from 3 month to 6 month to 12-month payment plan. All these things we do is to make home ownership accessible. So there's no limit, guys. So first things first, as a civil servant, go into your mind and tell yourself, and remove that part that says that you cannot own homes in Abuja. Delete it, then come back and let's make you a homeowner. Thank you.
Thank you for a very insightful one, Mr. Toyo. My name is John from JDC Home Ltd. And if you don't mind, Mr. Toyo, I have some very few questions for you. All because right. Everybody, with the whole scheme and everything going on, everybody is conscious and everybody is aware. So if you don't mind. So, most cases, the clients have done their part.
All right.
So as a developer, what role do you play in the mortgage scheme?
All right. So first things first, there are requirements a developer must meet up. Now, like recently, the Federal Mortgage Bank introduced the submission of EIA report, which is the environmental assessment report. Okay. So the developer must submit that. So if you are going for a mortgage plan, you should make sure that your developer has that. Then, of course, the title documentation. Like my company, we always settle for FCD lands. FCD lands are the most perfect land titles in Abuja. So it has to be an FCD title, preferably a CFO.
Okay.
Then approvals. You have to make sure that the approvals and permits are in order. You can have approval, but you need to be sure that what the developer is building, he's permitted to build such.
Very true.
When we talk about high density properties, low density, and medium density. So if it's a location that is meant for medium density, you have to make sure that all these things are in check.
True.
All right. So these are something the developer can do and make sure that you, as a civil servant, can access his properties through the mortgage scheme.
Thank you very much for this wonderful one, and hope to see you some other time.
All right, thanks. Pleasure's all mine.
Like you always say, see you at the top. See you at the top, guys.
Bye.